Mulan is one of my all-time favorite animated features. It's a film I find myself returning to every few years, and I discover something new each time. As the time goes by, I keep noticing more subtle nuances in the story and characters. Now, I'm not a video essayist, I'm a code monkey by trade. But the reason I once decided to learn programming was to make art, and video games seemed like the perfect vessel. I've always been fascinated by different kinds of storytelling and felt that for each medium there is a set of ideas that can only be communicated through that medium, whether on purpose or by accident. The reason I have decided to make a video about Mulan is that some time ago I discovered something I believed was extremely beautiful, and I wanted to share it with others. Mulan has many qualities, but I want to focus on one specific aspect of the story, and it's the idea of reflections. As someone with experience in CGI unintentionally pay attention to various artistic choices when it comes to rendering and drawing. I invite you, the viewer, to join me in finding a deeper and perhaps emergent meaning in the choice of materials in Mulan. Reflections are cheap in 3D animation because the information about the environment and lighting is already there. Rendering a reflection is simply a matter of applying light equations to the pixels in question. In traditional 2D art, however, reflections are much more expensive. There is no inherent information about the world on the canvas other than what has already been drawn. The artist has to paint the reflection by hand, which takes significantly more time and effort. There are several key moments in Mulan when reflections are employed in a very specific way to aid the storytelling. The film, as we know, is set in ancient China and follows a young woman named Mulan, the daughter of a war veteran. According to the customs of the time, she is expected to marry and bear children, thus bringing honor to her ancestors. However, she has a rebellious spirit and struggles to conform to her family's and society's expectations. She wants to be free of judgment and be able to express herself, but she is also aware of the consequences of defiance. Swallowing her pride, she joins a bride matching ceremony to fulfill her duty in the eyes of the society. Failing at it spectacularly, she is left alone and humiliated. This is the first time reflective materials become narratively significant in the film. For artistic purposes, most still bodies of water are drawn with reflective surfaces to create depth and realism. However, those reflections are usually neither detailed nor physically accurate. They're blurry, even when the water is still. Blurry reflections typically result from imperfectly smooth surfaces. For flat reflective surfaces viewed at an angle, filling in the reflections would be as simple as mirroring the image and applying a mask. But this would introduce too much detail, and in visual storytelling, details guide the viewer's attention. The goal is to keep details minimal and evenly distributed, except in areas meant to stand out. Variations in detail density is what draws our focus. When Mulan looks at her reflection in water trough with her makeup on, she begins singing. This is how the song Reflections begins. It is a way for us to get a glimpse into her inner turmoil and also for the writers to set up the foundation for further development of the idea. Later, we see her walk past a pond with a blurry reflection, again, understated to avoid distraction. Now, there are many themes developing at the same time here. We can see the statue, the cricket, and we transition towards the family shrine. Each of those details serve a purpose, but it is not what caught my attention this time. Let us focus solely on reflections for the purposes of this analysis. Here we can see a beautifully composed shot of Mulan paying her respects to her ancestors while watching her reflection at the same time. This scene emphasizes her inner conflict and the fact that she is missing the mark. She wants to make her family proud, but she cannot do it by wearing a mask and pretending to be someone that she is not. As she wipes off her makeup, Mulan takes her first step towards self discovery. The song doubles as a prayer, and prayer is something we do when we're desperate and need help. A prayer also helps us to identify and voice what is important to us so that we can focus on it in order to find a solution. She voices her deepest need to see her true self in a reflection. Right after this scene, we see her father comforting her, placing a hairpin in her hair as a symbol of unconditional love and faith that she will one day blossom, just like a flower. This wholesome moment between a parent and a child is interrupted when a military officer arrives, announcing a draft. One man from each family must join the war against the Huns. Mulan witnesses her father's heroic act of accepting the draft in order to protect his country and family, despite being disabled and too old to fight. Upon taking the draft order from the officer and silently retreating to his room, he opens the wardrobe where his old armor and sword are stored. This is an important moment, because it is the first time we see the sword, and despite being made out of metal, there are no reflections visible in it. The sword will later play a crucial role in the story. As Mulan's father attempts what I recognize as jianfa, a traditional Chinese sword form, his weakened grip fails him. The sword slips from his hands and clatters to the ground. Mulan, watching this moment of vulnerability in secret, realizes he is not capable of fighting. She realizes he will die in battle. Alone in the rain, Mulan sits on the family guardian statue, staring at her reflection in the puddle. Something inside her shifts. That night, she quietly takes her father's draft notice and leaves her hairpin in its place. In this simple act, she returns her father's love and accepts her true path. She then makes her way into the room with the armor and picks up the sword. This is the moment the sword transforms. Love and sacrifice are both sides of the same coin, and now, as she is proving that her love is strong enough to perform the sacrifice, the sword gains a perfect, physically accurate reflection for the first time in the story. Mulan sees herself clearly for the first time. Her prayer has been answered. She cuts her hair, shedding her old identity, and sets off to take her father's place. She will save his life, sacrificing her own in the process. The sword's power manifests again during the climactic battle between the Huns and Mulan's squad. Hopelessly outnumbered, their captain prepares for a final stand, choosing to fulfill their military duty through sacrifice, demonstrating to the Huns that Chinese soldiers fear no enemy, and China will never surrender. In this desperate moment, Mulan's gaze falls upon her sword. She isn't seeking acceptance of her impending death, but rather guidance. The sword awakens once more, its surface now mirroring the snowy peak above. In a flash of inspiration, Mulan seizes the projectile launcher. Without hesitation, she takes aim and fires. The resulting avalanche sweeps down, consuming everything in its path. At this moment, she has no idea whether she will survive. But survival was never her goal. Saving her family was, and she has just accomplished that. Everything else becomes irrelevant. Here, the narrative purpose of the sword, the only one in Mulan's universe that displayed physically accurate reflections, reaches its completion. Not a single other sword in the movie possesses this ability. And the only one that does belongs to Mulan's father, and exclusively changes its material in her hands. Like many great stories, the tale of Mulan follows the structure of the hero's journey. The hero's journey is a common narrative archetype that describes a hero's adventure where they face challenges and return home transformed. This journey consists of key stages, including the call to adventure, crossing a threshold, encountering trials and allies, confronting a major obstacle, and ultimately returning home changed. Within the hero's journey, there is a specific role reserved for the mentor. A mentor is a character who aids the hero, offering guidance during times of challenge and temptation. In the case of Mulan, it is easy to attribute the mentor role to Mushu, Li Shang, or even the cricket. However, after deeper analysis, I am inclined to believe that the only sentient character who truly fits this role is the sword. Its magical properties, whether by purpose or accident, were woven into the plot through a series of brilliant artistic choices. The sword is also why Mulan can never be remade in live action. Traditional animation remains the only medium that naturally supports the interplay of physically accurate and stylized reflections. I believe Mulan is a masterclass in visual storytelling, stretching the boundaries of what is possible and hiding magic in plain sight. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.